It looks like we still have a number of people flowing in, so we're going to give it about another 3 minutes and start 2 minutes after, just so everybody can get those meeting reminders and click that link. So just a few more minutes. Thank you. Thank you all for joining. We'll be starting in 2 minutes. Thank you all for joining today, and welcome to our overview on how to turn your website into your best sales tool. My name is Josh Sweeney. I'm the president and co-founder of FounderScale, and I'm joined here by Chris LaFay. Chris?
Hello, my name is Chris LaFay. I am the CEO of Classic City Consulting, where we are a web development and marketing firm that works to help founder-led businesses start scaling and growing their impact online.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, and I'm looking forward to get started. So if you have a question and you've used Zoom before, all you have to do is go down to the bottom panel on the bar, hit that Q&A button, type in your question at any time. So we're going to pause the video or pause the presentation throughout various sections after we close those sections out and answer any questions that you have. So feel free to put those in the Q&A and we'll be monitoring for any questions that you have. All right, we're going to do a switch real quick on the hosting. 1 second, just so I can share video. All right, Chris, you should be good to share the presentation. All right, so let's get started. While working with clients, we run into a number of very common issues, but one very specifically that comes up a lot, which is that client websites are often built to be beautiful brochures, but not always the best sales tool. And for your website to be a great sales tool, you really need to focus on two key areas, which are content and conversion. Let's get started with content. This is the information on your site that educates the prospect that is visiting throughout the buyer journey. So you're wanting to educate them with the content that you're providing. And we're going to talk more about content today. And the challenge that we see most often is clients don't always have content on their site to support that buyer's journey and the sales cycle. So for example, there may be missing blog posts on specific products that that you're working to sell. They may be missing other things like social proof. So social proof would be testimonials, case studies, service pages that speak specifically to that buyer and their journey. And so we're going to dig down into some of the content today, but as just your first quick takeaway to give you some early value, there's two books I really like on this topic. One is They Ask You Answer. So if you haven't read that one, I think it's a fantastic book around content. And then Building a Story Brand is another one that gives some really good content just on how you be the guide through the journey with the content you're providing on your site and as an overall brand. So two really good books that you can look at. Now, as I mentioned, the conversation is two key areas, which is content and conversion. So the second item we're going to highlight today is conversion. Conversion is how a prospect completes a desired action. So you can have lots of desired actions. You may want them to buy, you may want them to register, you may want them to get a tour. There's all kinds of different desired actions, and those actions vary based on where they are in the buyer's journey. It doesn't always just go to the buy now, let's get you in the door. There's lots of education that happens in ways that we can put different conversion points into the site, which we're going to go over today. So, Chris, let's kick it off with the homepage.
Yeah, so on your homepage, this is going to be the most broad page that you are going to have. The goal here is that you want to have as many problem and solution minded sections as you can on the site. And so if you have read the book that Josh mentioned, Story Brand, following a very similar concept here, what we want to do is we want to take the types of solutions that you offer and figure out how those are going to be solving problems for people. Start thinking around not just, hey, I have a service, this is the service that I provide or the product that I provide, but how does that product or service actually make somebody's life better? The key point here is empathizing. If you can figure out a way to take how your product or service actually solves a problem for somebody and can empathize with that problem and make people think, oh yeah, that does sound like me. That's the key piece that you want to get from here. Is if on your homepage, which again, you might not know exactly who on the homepage is going to, what potential customers are actually hitting your homepage. It's the most broad area that you're going to have. And we'll dive in deeper as we go on. So the quicker you can empathize with people on your homepage, the better. Now, with this, we have a lot of like learn more type of links and things along those lines that might require people to make a really, high level action of saying, hey, my next action I need to take is scheduling a call, but that takes my time and I'm not comfortable with that. So Josh, how can we take some of those high leverage calls to action and make them a little bit softer and get some better conversions from this page?
Yeah, so I want to share a little story just to give some perspective here. A lot of times we see sites that are going straight for the sale, right? So they have the contact us button everywhere all over the website, and that's their main conversion. And what that says is, when you contact us, we're going to call you, right? The sales rep's going to call, we're going to follow up. And what we find based on the buyer's journey is a lot of people aren't ready for that interaction yet. They're still in the early research phase. But then when you look at that, there's nothing to support the early research phase on the website. So it's just contact us. So how do we get people to read the content and then want to take that desired action from a conversion perspective? So a couple of different ways that we can do this on a homepage. This is your broadest spectrum page. And so one option would be, when you look at the homepage, there might be a newsletter. A newsletter is an easy way to add one piece of conversion item. So as you see in this image, there's a bar that we've added to this page. And instead of just contact us everywhere, it's a very low friction option. All they're going to do is they're going to click the button. They may put in their first name and their email, and that's it. And they know that they're going to get the latest episode of the newsletter around, in this case, turning their website into their best marketing, best sales tool. And so they're going to get a little bit of content and get to know more about the organization and take an action that you can then utilize in different ways from a sales and marketing perspective. Another thing that we can do is we can add another layer here with our upcoming webinar. So if we're doing a webinar on this same topic, then they're going to be able to click that button and go a little deeper. Now, this is a little higher friction, right? They may even be further or not in the buyer's journey. But what I mean by friction is now that person's going to submit a form and they're going to have to make time in their day to show up for a webinar. But we have two different options on this page for them to engage with our brand. And each one of those helps the sales team because they give you some indication of what that person's interest is and what level of commitment they have at the current time because of how much friction is in that process, how much time they have to commit. So this tells the sales teams all sorts of different information, and it gives different conversion points on the page and reasons for your prospects to engage with you. Chris, let's go a little bit deeper into a services page in just a moment. So I guess we'll start with questions on that one. Any questions from the audience? Again, just go down to the bottom, hit that Q&A, and you can type any questions that you have into that box.
I do see one that's come in, Josh. I think that would
Yeah.
be good for you. I don't have any outbound marketing right now. What is a good first step to get something started like a newsletter?
Yeah, so newsletters, can be a big undertaking, but what we do is just start to look at what type of content could support the buyer's journey and answer the questions that your prospects might have. So in this case, we may start a really small newsletter and only have one piece of content. Other hacks to kind of getting newsletters going is using other people's content as well. So there's different ways to use non-competitive association content for verticals and things like that to get a newsletter off the ground and going. So there's a lot of, there's people who spend entire careers on understanding newsletters. So there's a lot to unpack there, but there's definitely ways to get them going pretty quickly.
Wonderful. Well, let's go ahead and dive into a service page now. So we're going one level deeper than the homepage at this point. And the great thing about a service page is that we now know what the customer's intent is. We understand the type of customer this is. We understand that in this case, this person's looking for website conversion services. So now we can start showcasing parts of the process and how we're actually going to go through and guide them through their current problem. What does that middle ground piece look of actually making that problem better, and then leading into a solution? So walking people through that process. And that works also if you have a product-based business as well. If you're buying something that is a tangible good, that product still solves a problem for somebody. So showcasing how that particular product actually solves a problem and not just listing out the features of that product or that service to really help empathize again with that problem. Also on these types of pages, now we can start showcasing very specific client testimonials. If you have people that have used this product or service within that industry that you're looking at, the more information you can put up about that person, the better. Name, title, job location, or company that they work with, the words that they say. If you have video, use video, but make it specific to that specific service that you're offering. So again, that customer is able to think, oh, wait, that does sound like my problem. Because if you can get people to empathize well with the content that you have on your website, you're already taking that potentially very cold lead and starting to warm them up just a little bit before they get into your funnel. So Josh, now that we have a general idea of what the person is actually interested in, how can we make these conversion points a little bit more optimized?
Yeah, one quick thing, just if you go back a slide, I mean, the one thing I love on here that Chris said is really having the testimonial, right? We call this social proof. So the more social proof that you have on the site, the easier it is on your sales team. So again, we're talking not just about content and conversion, but we're talking about making your website your best sales tool. And so social proof, case studies, anything else like that helps lower the friction for your sales team, because think about it just from a referrals perspective. You can, sometimes somebody says, hey, we want 3 referrals. We want to talk to these people, right? When you have case studies and testimonials, you get a lot less of those requests because you have social proof right there on your website. So there's lots of cool things you can do with content that really does help your sales team. Now, getting over to the conversion piece, now that we're a little bit deeper, what we like to do is get more specific about what we're pitching and what we're showing as a conversion opportunity. So before we were on the generic page, that's going to have conversion maybe into our newsletter, some more generic higher level items. But as we go deeper and know more about what they're looking for, we really want to be able to give them options to download or engage with content that's more specific to their needs. So on this service page, they were looking more specifically at website conversion itself. So we have an offer here, the guide to website conversion, and they can download that now. And what that really does is it helps guide the sales rep. So like, we're a HubSpot consulting shop, we're HubSpot partners. And so when I go look at this person in HubSpot after they've downloaded it, I see they went to the homepage, they went to the website conversion page, they read it, they downloaded something on this. Now, as a rep, I have sales information that I can use to guide that conversation right out of the gate. And if I do the right due diligence as a salesperson before I call them or before I get a meeting with this person, it's a lot easier. I don't have to ask them what they're most interested in. I can ask them more pertinent questions. So some other options here would be maybe if you wrote the book on a topic, right? Again, so a little more commitment from the prospect, because instead of a guide, maybe it's a 5-part guide. It's 5 pages. There's lots of images. It's very well spaced out, so it's easy to create. But then you have the book on this. Well, if they want to download the book or even purchase the book, they're showing a higher level of commitment. They're really more interested in this topic. And so again, it gives them another way to convert, a different type of offering that gives that sales rep an indication of how deep are they looking to go. And it really resonates with them because it's based on the more specific topic that they're looking for. So love to just get different ways to have conversion throughout that site, but more specific as we go deeper into pages. Do we have any questions on that? Giving everybody just a minute there. Chris, all right. You ready for the next section? Looks like we lost audio maybe. Go ahead and hit that next slide for us. All right, so while he's figuring out the fun audio stuff, we will get back to it here.
There we go. I apologize.
Right.
I'm sorry. One of my controls got messed up. I do apologize about that, y'all. So the next page type that we're going to be looking into is the industry page. So this is where we get the most precise. So we've gone from homepage, which is your most generic, down to your service, and now you're down to that tip of the funnel of the industry page. And this is where you can talk directly with clients about their specific problems and key in on specific types of users that are going to be visiting your site. And so in this particular case, we're talking about website conversion for education. And so the types of people that would be visiting this page are folks that are in the admissions team, possibly the educational marketing team, and possibly people that are dealing with website work as well. And so how do you take the types of problems that your service solves, which in this case is website conversion, and how do you angle that text and those calls to action around those particular people? So if you can start thinking about, broadly speaking, what types of problems do you does your service or product solve? Now, as we get down into this specific industry, what does that look like directly for them? And so there might be some duplication here in terms of what the service page has and what an industry page could have, but those keywords and phrases to start triggering that empathy should be very specific to that target market. And as we scroll down this particular page, we're going to be talking about the different types of services that this industry could possibly utilize. So whereas your service page is going to be a slightly larger bucket where it talks about that particular service, an industry that you work with might utilize multiple products and services. So thinking through each of those problem statements that you've already come up with for those services and products, how do they connect with this target audience? And so with education, having the admissions department and the marketing department talk to one another, it's typically problematic. Typically, they're on completely two separate planes. And so figuring out how to solve that problem. And then at the end of the day, for education, we all know, and educational institutions looking to connect with students. And so these are going to be the leverage here that you have, and a lot of these calls to actions at this stage in the game are going to be schedule a call, get in touch, buy a product. So Josh, how can we switch some of these up to make them a little bit easier to interact with?
Yeah. So real quick, what I love about industry pages is they speak directly to the prospect and for the service that they're most interested in. And that, again, just really helps the sales team. We work with a number of clients, and many of them have niched down by industry. So everything on their website really speaks to the industry. And what we find is that is a great sales tool because everybody wants to know, yes, I know you've provided this service, but have you done it for a company like mine? Right. And as a sales rep, if you don't have all that social proof and you don't have the pages, you have to do a lot to sell around that question, right? And prove that your system and what you do will work the same for all the other clients you've had as it would for them. And so people really want to know that you've done the same service for the same size company and the same industry. And the closer you can get to that, the easier it is for your sales rep to beat out another client or another competitor on that deal. And so we really love the industry pages, especially when you can get not only down to industry, but also combining industry with the service line, because it really speaks to them and get, again, from what we saw from those earlier slides, the social proof. So in this one, on the education perspective, if we're able to say, hey, here's a testimony or multiple of other people in the education space like you who also bought our website conversion services, that's just nailing it for your salespeople. So huge ways that content can help, as Chris was talking about. So as far as conversion, Chris mentioned like these people are probably getting deeper into the buyer's journey and maybe more interested because they're on very specific pages. And so what we did here was we gave you another example where you could schedule a 7-part series on converting prospects. That may not be the right terminology exactly, but converting people to students, right? People coming into students. Prospective students over to students. So what we did here is you would schedule today. And what we do on these is we do a 7-part series where they would get one email a day that highlights and kind of becomes the guide and guides them through some ways that they could convert more people to students. So again, it's pretty low friction in that you have this series, but you're getting one a day and it's a different format. but the content we're providing that prospect, our prospect is going to very well align with exactly website conversion for education. And so there's gonna be a much higher likelihood they're going to click that button. Another option, again, we kind of bring back the webinar option, but it's in a different model, right? So the earlier webinar is how to convert prospects. This one's more tailored towards students. And so this one, we're going to give them 7 action steps to streamline. Now, the cool thing is you're probably like, Josh, there's a lot of content. I got to put this together, right? But if you've already built out the email sequence for 7 steps, all you have to do is weave those into a story or a narrative for the webinar. So the webinar gets a lot easier, and it really does double duty. All that upfront work, the hard work of putting together the content and thinking through it, can be reutilized in different ways. And again, this does show your sales rep and your team that somebody's further along, or at least more interested in getting different information, because now they're willing to maybe commit 30 minutes to a webinar as opposed to just get a few emails. So again, different buying signals to help turn your website into your best sales tool.
We look like we have one question that popped in, and it was around the content of the website. Are these pages, especially the industry pages, going to be basically the same thing over and over? And how I would answer that question is, a lot of the types, the way that you talk about your services and that core problem that you're solving, yes, that is going to be duplicative. However, the angle in which you're taking for those particular industry pages is going to be completely different. How you outline the process, how you outline what does that end result look like, that is going to be different. And the goal here is to, on the flip side, to kind of emphasize what Josh was talking about in terms of duplicative content, is how can you save yourself time? Look at the stuff that you're posting on social media. Look at the types of content that you already have on your website. How can you take the pieces of content that you've already been creating and put them into different mediums? Let's say you use LinkedIn a lot for your own personal post. How can you take some of those posts, turn them into an email series? How can you take some of the educational content that you've created, transition them to blog posts or videos, etc., to help make that customer journey a lot more in-depth and thorough? And it's one of those things where you slowly build it over time. Make something work now, and then slowly make it work better.
Yeah, Chris, I wanted to add on to that. I was actually listening to a Russell Brunson video many months back, and he put it in an interesting way, because we talk to clients and say, you need to be on multiple channels. You have to offer content in multiple formats, because you don't know what format your prospect wants to engage in, right? Is it a podcast? Is it a webinar? Is it an email? Is it an email series? Is it a book? There's all these different formats. Is it social? There's all these different formats and channels, and you just don't know exactly what your prospect's preference is. And what Russell Brunson said was, people who like podcasts, people who like webinars, right? It just kind of reinforced in very simple terms, like, the people who are going to show up for the webinar, they're going to click that button. You need something else for the other people. And so I think that's what we like about presenting different conversion opportunities, different content options, is you're just not sure where that person's coming from. Some people are readers, some people listen to podcasts. It all varies pretty widely. And so we need a number of different options for that prospect to engage. And that's what's going to help turn your website into your best sales tool.
So in summary, with this, we've talked about these 3 different types of pages, going from the homepage being your most broad, a service page that's getting a little more narrow, and then an industry type page that is the most narrow of all. What you want to do as you're thinking through the various different pages of your website or your sitemap is think about how that journey is going to work for your customer. Where are they going to land? Where do you want them to go second? Where do you want them to go third? And that customer journey should mimic your sales process as much as possible. As you're thinking through the types of questions you get during the sales process, try to inject those questions and those answers into the verbiage of those pages. because the more those questions you can answer ahead of time for a customer before they fill out a contact form, attend a webinar, sign up for your newsletter, whatever that happens to be, the less of those questions that you'll be getting when you actually do end up sitting down with that person over virtual coffee or whatever that happens to look like. And then over time, when we're thinking about what types of actions to put on those pages, we want to make sure that we're curating different types of call to action, right, Josh?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, you want a number of different calls to action, as we just mentioned earlier. Is it getting the podcast? Is it getting the 7-part series, whatever it might be? And I just want to throw in one other little nugget off of what Chris was saying around like the flow of where users go on your page. Chris, I don't know if you use this, but we're big fans of Hotjar, and Hotjar has a free subscription where you can actually watch people use the site. And it's really interesting when you load Hotjar and you watch the videos to see how people bounce around, and whether you were guiding them through that sales journey or whether they're bouncing around the page. And so there's all kinds of optimizations that can be done when you can actually view what those users are doing on your site. So that's just a little quick tool as well to see how are they engaging.
Heat maps on websites is one of the most underutilized analytics tools out there, but especially by a lot of small to medium-sized business owners. And so by just having heat map analytics to be able to see what those users are actually doing and pairing that with something a little more data-driven like Google Analytics, you can really start understanding what your customers are actually doing and if they're using your website in the way that you had intended, to then make those changing or those A/B testing and those changing type of decisions on how to format the structure of your website. And then lastly, as we wrap up here, one of the things that we're going to do for anybody that is attending today, if you want to find gaps in your website, anybody that's in attendance today, shoot me an email, chris@classiccity.com, and we'll do a website audit going over the key pages of your website. How could your different calls to action be improved? Looking at if your message is actually clear from the homepage down to your service pages and your industry pages. What types of user experience increases could you possibly have? Is it easy for people to actually go and make an action that you want them to make? And what we'll do is we'll be delivering that in a Loom video for you where we actually walk through your website, talk about the various different pain points that we see, and then we'll schedule a consultation afterwards if that is something that you would like to pursue.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you all for joining. We want to open it up for any questions. If it's on content conversion, we're happy to share. So you have us, for the next few minutes here, and you can post it in the chat window. We're happy to answer those. So we'll hang out for just a few minutes and go from there. Chris, were there any additional in the Q&A?
Let's see here. There was one that was, there's one that's in here that, let's see here. Sorry, there's a couple, I'm reading through a few of them now. I have a product-based business. You talked a lot about process. I have a product-based business. How would that process walk through work for those pages that you outlined? So the way that I think about this is, again, kind of in the problem and solution standpoint. If you have a product, something physical, tangible that you're selling, somebody is going to buy that because it will solve a problem for them in some way, shape, or form. Even if you're selling t-shirts, right? There is still a problem that is to be solved there. So think about things. I want you to kind of think through things around what is that person thinking when they start searching for your business on Google, on Facebook or Instagram, whatever that happens to be. What are they actually thinking through? And those questions that they're thinking through should be the elements on those types of landing pages that you offer. Those are the types of questions you need to be answering for your potential customers. And it might not necessarily be a step-by-step process, 1, 2, 3, done, laid out like that, but still being able to answer those questions is the key part.
Yeah, I think one good indicator for research purposes too, on like what pages might you need on your website, is we always set up Google Search Console, and it tells you exactly what people are searching for, whether you're coming up, whether they're clicking through to your site, what pages are clicking, what they're clicking on. And that gives you a lot of performance data to say like, man, I'm ranking really high on this and I'm getting lots of I'm getting lots of impressions on Google from a search perspective, but nobody's clicking. That means that probably the title, URL, and everything else on the page is missing in some way. There's an opportunity to add another page for that product that comes at it from a different angle. And I think the good thing with products is you can really think about it like if you've taken any personality assessments, you got like the 4 quadrants. It's like, okay, what quadrant could somebody be in? What do they want to know? And how are we reinforcing that on the page? Because somebody that's more creative is probably going to come at it differently from somebody that's more analytical, or, there's lots of different ways to slice personality. So I always find like looking at a personality wheel, Myers-Briggs, those types of information give you the idea of the types of people and how they would want to be communicated to. So like I'm a big bullet point person, I want it bullet points fast, give me the value. Let me see what it is. I'll make a pretty quick determination. Other people want long form. They want to really read about it. They want to know. Same thing with, there's all kinds of ways to differentiate products as well.
We have one other question, Josh, that I think that you could answer here. I have an idea for a webinar, but I don't know where to start. What's a good initial starting point for launching a new webinar?
Yeah, so webinars are great. They're a great way to get in front of and engage with that audience. I think it really comes down to how can you come across from an educational perspective and not worry about selling anything. So the clients we work with that have the best success from webinars and have more repeat attendees are really delivering an educational topic. And it may be from that company's perspective. So if you look at what you do, what are the differentiators and how can you educate the buyer and really help be the guide and not try to pitch them on a webinar. If they wanted to be pitched, they'd probably click your contact us and talk to a salesperson. So we really lean towards how can you educate the buyer? So for example, we specialize at FounderScale in helping businesses go from founder revenue to scalable revenue. And so what we do is we have a webinar where we educate everybody that's attending that like the lead generation, the just hire a marketing agency, that revenue is built, not bought. You can't just outsource revenue generation. And I share some examples of me spending over $300,000 trying all of these different things in a previous company that I grew and sold. And so we're really being the guide through that journey and then saying, here's how we solve that problem. Here's how our company solves it. Here's how you can solve it. And then we give away lots of takeaway value. And if that resonates, great, call us. If not, hopefully it saves you lots of money by not making the mistakes that we did. So we really just try to take as much of an educational approach and in order for people to also want to come back to your other webinars.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Well, those are the questions that we have that we've had so far. Josh and I will be hanging around here for a few extra minutes. So if anybody has any other questions they would like to ask, feel free to drop it in the Q&A channel in Zoom.
Thank you all. Have a great day. All right. If it looks like there's no additional questions, then we will wrap this up. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Josh, as well. Have a good rest of the day, guys.
Yeah. Bye.